November 25th, 4 cards revealed for Kobolds and Catacombs. If you missed some of the cards, the playlist is in the top right. First up is Grand Archivist, 8 mana 4/7 epic neutral that reads, at the end of your turn, cast a spell from your deck, targets chosen randomly. So this is basically Kobold's version of Tortle and Primalist, but the catch here is instead of discovering the spell, you cast it from your deck. I think this makes Grand Archivist more playable. You can build the spells in your deck around this card by only using expensive board clears to ensure that random target effect isn't really an issue, or you could only include spells that give you cards and value. I think Steelio Priest deck would actually be really fun with this card. Random mind controls free from ambers, mind games, cards off of Devour and Thoughtsteal. Steelio Priest is definitely not a competitive deck, but I think this card will be a fun addition. Still, I think for almost all decks, it's going to be better to run the best spells in the deck, and there's no real point in trying to fit Grand Archivist in. I will say, a deck that uses almost minions exclusively, like Midrange Hunter, might be able to sneak in Grand Archivist and some expensive spells like Call of the Wild to get crazy powerful boosts toward the end of the game, but it's an end of turn effect, so in this case, no 5 damage huffer for you. Well, alright, you got me. This card is pretty trash. I like the combo potential and deck building direction this card has over Primalist, but it's not going to see any competitive play. Next up is Arcane Tyrant, 5 mana 4/4 epic elemental neutral that reads, costs 0 if you've cast a spell that costs 5 or more this turn. So this is similar to Happy Ghoul, the 3/3 that costs 0 if your hero is healed on the same turn, and Happy Ghoul saw some play in Warlock because the class had just gotten a lot of lifesteal, and heals to the hero would happen every so often that would allow them to get a 0 mana 3/3 pretty consistently. Arcane Tyrant is a little harder to play for the 0 cost. The trick with these type of cards is the decks have to be mid-range, not too fast so they can hold onto a card for a while, but not too slow where a 3/3 or a 4/4 just aren't worth running in your deck. The fact that Tyrant is an elemental is important. I think you could get this card to work for 0 cost with the spells in Druid, Paladin, Warlock, or Priest, but I think for the card to be worth putting in a deck, Mage is the way to go. I'm expecting Elemental Mage to be pretty control oriented, but maybe just adding another elemental is always a good thing for this deck. Elementals have good enough early game, so maybe you can run a few expensive spells, and when casting them, Tyrant is out there for extra tempo. Another route would be a super aggressive Mage, where the only activator for this card would be Firelance Portal. Mage is getting a lot of draw, like have you seen their legendary weapon? And maybe there's a deck where Mage's crazy draw can give them constant damage to win games quickly. So turn 7 Firelance Portal plus a 0 cost 4/4 is pretty good to close out any aggro game. I wouldn't rush to Michael's to go and craft this card, but like Happy Ghoul, I think it may be able to carve out a niche in one of the classes. Next is Hoarding Dragon, 4 mana 5/6 common neutral dragon with the death rattle, give your opponent 2 coins. So the best comparison to this card I've heard is Hungry Dragon. That card's downside was its battlecry summoned a 1-drop for your opponent. It was an okay card. Hoarding Dragon is better. Death rattle means you can silence it if you really want to, and the 2 coins could work in a fatigue deck, but honestly just giving them to your opponent isn't really that bad. Maybe as spell activators they could punish you for more, but any additional 2 mana tempo plays aren't really going to be too bad. 4 mana 5/5 is obviously good stats, so maybe some aggro decks can run it, but I think the most likely reason to play Hoarding Dragon is because it's a dragon. There's a sweet spot for the number of dragons Dragon Priest needs in order to work well, and I think this card could be good enough that it could make the cut. It's kind of a boring design for the card, but if it does see some play, the rare times that this works against the user are going to be pretty funny. And last up is Psychic Scream, 7 mana epic priest spell that reads, shuffle all minions into your opponent's deck. This is a great priest flavored card. If you're missing Entomb, well this ain't that card. It's a mass board clear sort of like Vanish, but the implications are quite different. Like Vanish, it won't activate death rattles, so we can all scream at living mana like we did when the card was released, but now it's actually gonna work. Was that a dad joke? That was a pretty bad dad joke. In addition, Psychic Scream shuffles the minions into your opponent's deck. They'll now likely be ahead in fatigue, and you also want to watch out what minions are on both sides of the board when you play this, because shuffling them into your opponent's deck could come back to bite you. Looking at the shuffle the other way though, putting low statted or bad minions in your opponent's deck is a great way to give them bad top decks. I really like the card's design. I like that Priest is getting a mass board clear, but I don't think it's going to see play. Maybe it's because we've never seen late game Priest board clears, and I'm just not used to the idea, but I see a control Priest trying to be built around this card and just failing. Big Priest just wants to get those big minions early enough in the game to take advantage of crazy value. They don't want to get rid of valuable minions on the board, let alone give them to their opponent. It's kind of slow for Highlander Priest. I don't see a problem running the 1 copy in there just for extra removal, but I don't think it's going to be a big contribution to the deck as a whole. It's a non-duplicate deck, so this could replace one of the weaker cards, but I still don't think it's going to be a staple of every Highlander Priest. Dragon and Silence Priest want to maintain their minions and aren't able to quickly reload on on an empty board. I think they'd just be better off fighting on board with their minions in the late game. And then there's this Control Priest that's been whispered throughout the land, and I just don't see the priest cards that can match up against Jades, or even just the more controlling Death Knights in their hero powers. Maybe Quest Death Rattle Priest is finally going to meld together to work, but is a 7 mana spell that's not going to activate your Death Rattles really going to fit? I think it's a really well designed card, but, and let the record show that this will be my controversial opinion of the set, I don't think Priest is quite ready for Psychic Scream. Well, those were today's cards. If you want to check out the other ones, playlist is here, and if you want my opinion as more cards come out, feel free to subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow, but until then, ta-ta.